Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to a freshly dejected episode of Gabriel Talks Football, GTF. My name is Aldo Gandia. And before we begin, about 20 minutes before we went live here, the Bears Live 96 posted this, and excuse the language. This one was different. Not sure I've seen a damaged and traumatized fan base like this before with this team. Unfucking prepared for week one rival, outcoached, outclassed, gutless performance. And he issued one more thought. My first heartbreak in high school, and damn, high school doesn't hurt like this shit does. Call it overreaction. But coordinators' heads should be rolling today if they want to send a message to anyone, fans included. So obviously no one's going to get fired today, but we are going to sift through the damage with the man who can do it best, and his name is Gabriel. Greg, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. I'm glad I'm not at Hallis Hall working like I used to, because when you go in the day after a loss, it's not fun. A little better sitting here in my study talking to you, but like just you're reading that thing, and I saw the reactions on X last night and this morning. A lot of it is overreaction because everybody expected a win. Mm-hmm. Everybody wanted to win. They didn't win. You know what? The New York Giants fans feel the same way. The Cincinnati Bengals fans feel the same way. You could go through teams that thought they were going to get off to big starts and they didn't. Shit happens in this league. Why it happened? I don't know. Am I going to say they got out coached? No. Some things went the wrong way, and it started early. And I didn't know Komet had until Flu said it in the presser after. Komet had fumbled the snap on that first sneak. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that bottled up that whole play. They probably should have done the same damn play again. But you can second guess. I saw some people saying why'd they do that instead of punting early in the game? Because he wanted to get some momentum. I get it. Hey, it's over with. It's on to the next week. It's not the end of the world. I know everybody wants to think it's the end of the world, and they want to hear me bitch. And you know me, I don't have a negative bone in my body. I look for the positive.
You look for the positive, but there weren't any yesterday, or were there?
There weren't a whole lot. I mean, you could say some things like people might say, the first half was a decent first half. I mean, they were in the game. It's 10-6. And you think, okay, if they hold them, make a punt on their first drive to open the second half, then you got a chance to go down and take the lead. And what happens is Green Bay comes out and they just kick Chicago's ass, so to speak, on that first game. But, going back then to I think it was a drive after that, the first Bears drive, and on second down, Fields might have been first down, tries that bootleg. And some people might say, well, Braxton Jones missed the block on the edge. He didn't miss the block at all. Everybody was blocking down to the right side, and the edge was coming free. And the hope is that the edge is going to bite on all the action going the other way, and it's going to give Fields the time to do the bootleg. Guy made a great play. Mm-hmm. And there was one play that Wright got beat real bad by what the hell's the Packers edge guy? But there was a penalty on it, so it didn't count as getting beat. Other than that, he held up. I didn't like the way Cole played.
Rashawn Gary, right?
Yeah, Rashawn Gary. I mean, he beat him bad, but didn't count. Cody Whitehair got beat real bad inside. I won't play. I'm not so sure if it's me. I put, because he's bigger, brawnier, it is put Carter on the left side if he can do it, and put Whitehair back at center until Tevin is ready. But I'll tell you what won't surprise me. Now your game one's done. You can sign some veterans this week, and their salary's not guaranteed. It's week to week. And I would not be a bit surprised if you see a couple changes in personnel today or tomorrow.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with what you've said here at the start of the show. Let's just go back to the Cole Kmet under center play. Why? I mean, we saw that was strictly out of the Matt Nagy playbook. And in fact, in the Thursday night game, Matt Nagy ran that same play. And so it's almost as Luke Getzey, the Bears offensive coordinators, are tone deaf. This stuff didn't work when Nagy was here. It's not working with Nagy in Kansas City. These trick plays, all you need is a yard.
I got one thing.
Bears power the ball and down their throats.
Nagy wasn't calling the plays. Andy was.
Well, I don't know about that.
It made it look like on the one play Andy or Nagy was calling stuff. Andy calls the freaking plays.
I don't know about that.
Well, I think if you call up Kansas City, you'll find out that Andy was calling the plays. But
all right. Well,
that's for another time.
Either way, it's not smart football to get somebody who handles no snaps the entire game on an important play like that, to have him handle the snap. You've got a guy who does it.
Okay.
Game, the quarterback.
I get it. And then you should have had you could theoretically have blasting game lined up behind him and do the push. It didn't work. If it had worked, everybody's saying, oh, what a great play. Correct? I mean,
absolutely. But the
fact
is that it rarely works.
No, I'm not going to say it rarely works because they've done the play before. They did it last year.
Yeah, I don't remember last year, but did it work last year?
Yeah. Well, he bobbled a snap, period. And I'm not making any excuses. That's just what happens. Stuff happens in games that you don't like. And believe me, although I'm not going to sit here and bitch. Am I disappointed? Damn right I'm disappointed. Because I expected more. I just don't think the whole, what's the word I want? The intensity level was not there.
Yeah, and you and I talked about that. Remember when I in our last show I talked about the importance of the Bears really setting up the players to know about the rivalry. I was worried about Eberflus really getting the team up for the game and coming out of the tunnel and not being flat. And it just seemed like all those concerns I had became reality.
Well, supposedly he had shown videos, especially to the younger players, that were designed to build that up. Okay. He said Larry's got that thing about Nate Davis. I don't have the answer to that. I haven't watched the tape yet, the all 22.
Sure.
Because I had to get some reports in for my real job this morning. And I do that first thing in the morning, every morning. So I will do that. Yeah, you can go back, and I don't agree with David Haw too much, but he had a post yesterday saying, maybe preseason is important. And in this case, a lot of key guys missed a lot of preseason time.
Yeah. And
so it was their first real game action was yesterday. But, it's over with. Now it's, you can piss and moan. I guess, Flu says you got 24-hour rule. So you got, and other coaches do the same thing. You piss and moan for 24 hours, and Tuesday you better be ready to play again. You go back to the drawing board. You find out what the hell you did wrong, why it went wrong. That's the key. Why did certain plays go wrong?
Right.
And like what's the reasonable explanation for DJ Moore? Pepe has there. I don't have a reasonable explanation because I haven't watched the all 22. So how they had him covered or what they did to scheme against him. So I don't have the answers yet right now. I will, but I just don't have them now. The best thing you can do, situation like this, is try to, and I'm doing this, saying this from my experience, is you sit in with the players, you go over the whole tape, you go through the corrections, why they did it wrong. If you're going to make, there could be guys that lose their job over that game, but it's going to be players, not coaches.
Right.
And then, because players, what it gets down to, players got to play the freaking game. And if players play the game the way they're supposed to play, you win the game. And if they don't execute, you don't win the game.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Green Bay had a good game plan. LaFleur called a good game. Their defense, I knew their defense was going to be stout, and their defense was stout. They played damn good.
Mm-hmm.
But that game still, at halftime, was for the taking. And Green Bay came out and took it, and the Bears didn't.
Let's take a look at Justin Fields' number. And I know when Dan comes in about 30 minutes or so, he's going to talk a lot about Justin Fields because he was very unhappy with the performance. These were the numbers for Justin Fields: 24 out of 37, 216 yards passing, a touchdown, an interception thrown. He rushed for 59 yards. He was sacked 4 times out of 27. Let's talk about that first, the sacks. Did you think that the offensive line did an A job, B job, C job, D job, or they failed?
C minus.
Mm-hmm.
And I no, let's go back. Green Bay was doing some stunning and some blitzing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And which, can make it harder to pass protect. And I'm going to go back. I'm going to turn this around a little bit. The Bears don't do that. They always rush 4. And it baffles me as why.
Mm-hmm.
You got, and especially with Tremaine Edmonds. Tremaine Edmonds is a very effective pass rusher, or blitzer, if you want to change the term.
Yes.
And has shown production in that, be it a pressure or a sack, and yet they just go with the 4-man pressure. And Green Bay's line's not that bad. So you need more, you send a 5th guy, you're liable. They got some pressures, but if you send a 5th guy, you might get more sacks.
Mm-hmm.
No matter who it is. But it's going to make it that much more difficult. You got 5-on-4 when you're just sending 4, you send a 5th. Now everybody's in a 1-on-1 situation, and maybe you set up your blitz in such a way that 5th guy is unaccounted for.
Well, you switched over to the defense, so me put up this graphic here of the defense. These are the new guys that were acquired by Ryan Poles during the offseason. TJ Edwards, according to ESPN stats, had 14 tackles. Tremaine Edmonds, 8 tackles, 2 of them for a loss. And Ndakwe had 4 tackles, 2 for a loss, 1 sack. DeMarcus Walker, 2 tackles, 1 tackle for a loss. And Andrew Billings, 2 tackles. And your overall impression of the new guys on the defense?
Well, when you're looking at the numbers, that's the way the numbers should look. The linebackers should be making the plays.
Mm-hmm.
The interior defensive line, I thought, was hot and cold. All told, I thought Billings played pretty well. Did not like the way Jones played. Again, I'm saying this without having rewatched the game. But I thought the 2 young guys,
mm-hmm.
Pickens and Dexter,
mm-hmm.
they flashed when they were in there. And in fact, Pickens was very disruptive on one play
mm-hmm.
down by the goal line. And his quickness off the ball is unbelievable. And I think he's earned himself more play time. I've always thought he's a 3. Just they got him playing at the nose. I get it. But if he's the quickest guy off the ball and the most disruptive, why don't you put him at the most, at the most important position?
Mm-hmm.
You follow what I'm saying?
Sure.
Again, and I'm throwing darts at the wall because, they got reasons why everybody's playing. But I thought even when they drafted him, I thought Dexter was going to be the 1 and he's the 3, and Pickens was going to be the 3 and not the 1. But it is what it is. But my main fault, I thought the safety play was not good at all.
Mm-hmm.
There was blown coverages on the safety play. Corners, not too bad. In fact, I thought they'd go after Stevenson more than they did. He gave up a touchdown. He actually had good coverage on the play.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't. The corners held up fairly well over the course of the game. It's the safeties, and then TJ Edwards got beat real bad by Jones. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why they single up a linebacker on a guy like that. And they've been doing it, they did it before Flus came, and since Flus comes, that's a mismatch, especially if you got a speedy back like Jones.
Yeah, it seems to be a trend in the NFL to do that. Let's take a look at Romeo Doubs' touchdown, his first touchdown of the game. And I thought Greg Olsen did a splendid job of explaining why Doubs was open in the end zone. So you'll see Tremaine Edmonds is in the middle here, and he's going to pick up the running back coming out of the backfield. And so that's going to leave the middle of the field totally open, which is then Eddie Jackson's responsibility. We'll see the TV replay here, the TV coverage of it here, and then we'll see the all 22, the one that Fox TV presented. I shot it off their TV screen. There's Edmonds circled. He's going to pick up the linebacker coming out, or excuse me, the running back coming out of the field, or the tight end. And there goes Eddie Jackson. Should have leverage to the inside, but he lets the receiver go past him.
He got beat on the cut.
It's just awful that a veteran like that allows that to happen, unless he doesn't understand the play because he wasn't paying attention in practice or whatever it is.
Although it's real simple, he got beat.
It's awful.
And he's a guy that when you go back to early in his first couple years in college, he was a corner.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been manned up before because Alabama plays a ton of man coverage, always has. He knows how to play man. Sure. That's just a blown coverage on his part.
Yep.
And that's his fault. That whole play is his fault. He should have done a lot better job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so when we hear my good buddy Dan Aguirre saying fire Alan Williams, doesn't the defensive coordinator assume some responsibility here, because the guy is coaching it? Eddie, you gotta, or is it just on the player? Do you fire the player? Or do you fire the coach? What do you do?
A play like that's on the player. He's covering the guy. He didn't do a very good job.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now if you look at everybody else is covered on that play.
Mm-hmm.
The one guy who's supposed to have Doubs, Eddie Jackson, lets him go right across his face.
Yeah,
it's a poor job on his part.
Yep, everybody is covered. There's no doubt about it. Maybe the guy.
Look at the rest of it. Everybody is covered. The guy who blew the coverage was Eddie Jackson. So it's easy to say, oh, it's the coach's fault. Well, the coach doesn't play the game. So who did? The coach blow the coverage? No, the player did.
The one pushback I'll have for you there, Greg, is sometimes players tune out coaches because they just don't know how to communicate effectively with that brand of players. That some players are visual learners, some are auditory learners, some like to be kissed in the ass, some like to be kicked in the ass, and so forth. And so if you have coaching staff, and I'm not saying it's a defensive coordinator, but a position coach who isn't figuring out a way to relate to the player to get 100% execution and consistency, then it's the coach's fault.
Well, I can't answer that. I don't disagree with you, but I can't answer it because neither one of us has been sitting in a meeting room with them listening to how, and it's not the defensive coordinator, it's the DB coach. And then you really got a safety and a corner coach. John Hoke is the main secondary coach, and he's very, very good. But he mostly coaches the corners, and the other guy coaches the safeties. And who blew the coverage? The safety. Who had a weak game overall? The safeties.
Indeed. There's no doubt about it.
And part of it could be attributed to, Brisker missed the last 3 weeks because of a groin injury. And so he wasn't getting the reps.
Doug wants to know your opinion on the Bears rushing just for not blitzing against this stout offensive line that the Packers have. You know,
I already answered that one, I think, about 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, the definition of crazy is doing the same thing over and over again and not getting the same results. You're not getting there with 4-man rush. Why not?
I agree with you. Most good pressure defenses send guys a lot. They mix it up. They make it difficult on the offense. And it's sound scheming. Okay, this philosophy is send 4 and then you got 7 in coverage. Now, I got it when they're playing against Aaron Rodgers because you need as many guys as you can because he's gonna find that tiny little window and throw a perfect ball. But in this guy, his first start, pressure the shit out of him. That part is on the coach.
Yeah.
Because it's the game plan, but part of that, it's on Flus too, because he's got to sign off on the game plan.
Absolutely. My good friend Robert Trader, who is a Packers fan, says this game was won in the trenches. The Bears couldn't generate a pass rush while Love had a clean pocket all day. Why wasn't Love blitzed more often? He makes the biggest start of his life to this point with a lot of pressure on him. They didn't even try to confuse him. And that's what bothers me. I mean, that's Bear football, is to pressure the quarterback, confuse the quarterback, sending guys. I mean, that's not even Bear football. That's elemental football. And for the first time in my life, I am questioning Alan Williams and this coaching staff, because part of it is because of the grand disappointment I faced, I am in right now. And secondly is that everybody's been telling me this stuff, and I've been, giving the coaching staff the benefit of the doubt. Now that doubt is starting to weigh.
I can't argue with it, and I can't disagree with you. I've been saying for 2 years, I think they need to pressure more using the linebackers. And I thought one of the, when they signed Tremaine Edmonds, I thought that was one of the reasons why you signed Tremaine Edmonds, is because he can pressure. It's not like you're going to do it every play. You pick and choose.
Absolutely.
Okay. And if you're using a sub package, so you got 5 DBs and 2 linebackers in there, you can send Edwards or you can send Edmonds. Hell, you can drop Edmonds into coverage and bring one of your safeties. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. They play that game too vanilla.
Yeah,
I think is the best way to put it. And I didn't like it. Now, not only do the players get critiqued today, but the coaches do too.
Yeah, good.
Okay, I mean, and well, some of it comes from Flus, but it comes from Ryan. I could speak from when I was there, and they're going to probably do things a little differently. But the day after a game, Jerry and I watch that tape meticulously, and we take notes, and then we meet with the coaching staff. Coaching staff met with the players. We met with the coaching staff.
Caesar has an interesting question. He is, when does the head coach step in and change the OC and DC game plan? It isn't quite like that, right? Don't they work together on developing the plan? Or if Alan Williams develops it first, that everything, as you just said, actually, Eberflus is looking at the plan and approving or saying, questioning, why don't we blitz more or whatever. This isn't just Alan Williams presenting the plan and immediately Eberflus rubber stamping.
I've always thought that he's got a say in it, but I don't know if that's true or not.
Okay.
He should. especially because that's his forte.
Yeah.
So he should be involved. Brian DeBall is the head coach of the New York Giants. He's not the offensive coordinator, but guess who calls the plays?
Mm-hmm.
Brian DeBall. And Matt LaFleur calls the plays for Green Bay because that's his strong point.
Right.
And Flus became a head coach because he was a very successful defensive coach.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he should be more involved. Again, he may be really involved. We don't know exactly what goes on. Yeah. But from the outside looking in, he's not involved enough.
Mm-hmm.
If they win the game and the offense puts up another 120 yards worth of offense, you're saying, well, that was great. But hey, there was blown assignments. And again, I have to look at the all-22 to see why certain guys weren't open. Like Chase Claypool, he was targeted twice. And the one, that might count as a drop, but that ball got tipped. Mm-hmm. It got hit by the defensive end and then changed direction of play side. That one's not on him. And if he had caught it, it would have been about a 5-yard loss. Yeah. So he was better off having dropped it. But why wasn't he targeted more? I don't have the answers yet.
Yeah, it was very strange. And on one play, Claypool didn't show much of an effort in blocking downfield.
That's true.
So he's getting a lot of heat about that. Does he really care? Is his head in the game?
Well, I don't agree with stuff like that. That's fans talking because of disappointment. But if they felt it was a loaf, meaning the coaching staff, he's going to know about it.
Yes, indeed. Jordan Love's performance, 15 out of 27, 245 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, was sacked just once. In the first half, I thought Jordan Love missed probably 3 or 4 passes that he should have, because of inaccuracy, he missed. And I'm thinking to myself, holy cow, this is exactly what I've heard from some Packer analysts, is that his accuracy is awful. And in the second half, he turned it around and hit just about everything that needed to be hit. And the play calling was perfect for him. And of course, and I'm talking about both sides of the ball, the Bears defense play calling and the offensive play calling for the Packers. Your assessment of Jordan Love?
I agree with you. I thought his first half was very, very average. I'm getting the feedback on this.
Okay, I will fix that. Hold on. You're hearing it from yourself?
Yeah, and it still is.
Is that better now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Benny.
All right. Your assessment of Jordan Love?
Yeah, I thought his first half was very average. The game was for the taking. And he played a lot better. I think a lot of it had to do with the ground game took off too.
Yeah.
And then he played good. And they had, he had the big play by Jones when I guess you got to say that T.J. Edwards blew the coverage. He just got flat out beat. Mm-hmm. And it turned into a big play because the whole center of the field was empty. It was a good play concept too, but I think that changed. And then you had the 2 turnovers, which didn't help. The fumble by Fields and then the interception. And the interception was a horrible interception. I mean, that was just a piss poor read on his part.
It really was.
Aside from that, I didn't have a lot, without seeing the all-22, a lot of negative things to say about him. His accuracy in the last 8 minutes of the game was even on short passes. And I think now part of that was, that game was over at that point. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, he just, I mean, even the short stuff, he was off. You want to look at a plus? Roshan Johnson's a motherfucker now.
Yeah. He had 5 carries for 20 yards, all of them in, I think, the second half for sure, most of them in the fourth quarter. He had a touchdown. I will say this, that we need to, Roshan Johnson looks the part, but he did come in a part where the Packers were guarding more against the pass, and so he had room to run, but he plays with second and third effort, which is outstanding. And I didn't think Deontay Foreman, although his numbers aren't very impressive, I thought he played hard.
I agree.
Big disappointment was Khalil Herbert in my mind.
Yeah, well, to me, Herbert isn't special.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to have the hole. He did a good job with that screenplay on the second play of the game.
Mm-hmm.
That was good. It was a good run. He ran physical. After that, he was average.
Okay. Oh, Lord.
And I don't disagree with you about Foreman. I thought D'Onta Foreman kind of jumped out a little bit and did some good things. I wouldn't be a bit surprised that you're going to see Foreman and Roshan get more snaps this coming game.
Yeah, I agree with that. We might start to see the playing time of Khalil Herbert start to dissipate a bit. Now, one of the things that Danny Shimon said, and he actually said this prior to the game, he predicted the Bears were going to lose the first 3 games, but by the time November rolls along, that this team was going to be firing on all cylinders and winning a lot of games. He just felt like with everything that has happened in preseason, with the injuries to so many people, and you got different players, and basically this was a preseason game for the Bears for their starters because they had not played together, that things were just going to start slow. And so going to Tampa Bay with the heat is going to be a tough win. And then, of course, Kansas City is going to be a tough win. So he predicted 0-3, but that things would start to look much better. I'm actually starting to take some solace in that because I understand that it takes a while for a team to generate some mojo. Your thoughts on what Danny said?
I've given that thought already. And because you got to, I'm always trying to look at some positives.
Mm-hmm.
And perfect example is Detroit last year.
Mm-hmm.
They lost 6 out of their first 7 games.
Yeah.
And were terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden it came together. And when you look at that roster coming together and the Bears roster coming together, there is similarities.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but now let's fast forward this week, Tampa. I watched all that game. Tampa does nothing for me. Minnesota sucks.
Okay. I love to hear this. You're making me feel better already, Greg.
Minnesota is a lousy football team.
Uh-huh.
Tampa isn't much better. Now their defense is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they got 2 big monster defensive tackles that Vita Vea, he's going to give anybody a hard time. If there's one day you want a Tevin Jenkins, it's next week because there's going to be at least part of the game, depending on where their tackles line up, that he's going against Vita Vea, and it's at worst going to be a standoff.
Mm-hmm.
And Davis should play fairly well against Vea. I don't think Cody can. They're playing the kid from Pitt now as their 3. I didn't watch it close enough to see if they're rotating him or not. And he's not very big. He's 275, 280 pounds. Maybe he's 285 now, but he's really quick and explosive. So, he can be disruptive. It'll be interesting to see how that one goes next week. Games in Tampa. They're coming off a win. It's going to be 90. Hell, it's been 90 here most of the last.
Very true. Good point.
Okay, so the difference is going to be human. Know what you do. I mean, I know the strength coach well, And Jimmy's going to have, starting Wednesday, you overhydrate. You get your players ready. And so when you get down there in that heat, because what happens if you're not properly hydrated, that's when you get pulls. Right. Pulls aren't necessarily because you overexerted a muscle area. It's because you don't have enough fluids in your body.
Right.
And so, and Jimmy is on top of that. It's on the players to do it. But you gotta properly hydrate, and that's got to start on Wednesday, so that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, they got a good storage of fluid in their body, and good fluid, not beer, and
the good stuff, not beer.
And then go down there and play the game.
Don Burr, our resident Detroit Lions fan, says Greg is being a homer. Minnesota and Tampa will smoke the Bears easy. You want to say something to Don Burr that I haven't already said? Like, fuck you.
Hey, did you watch the game, Don?
No, Don was watching the Bears game and having a good time.
Well, the game that was on before the Bears game, it was on. Was that on Fox? Yeah, I think it was on Fox. No, it was on CBS, I think. But I watched most of that. I can say most of it. I switched to the other game a little bit, but for the most part, I watched the Minnesota game. And neither team, Baker Mayfield got a little hot in the second half, but that's because Minnesota didn't pressure them at all.
Yeah,
I mean, there was like one really good throw that Baker Mayfield had, and that's it.
Yeah. Coach T, who is the new co-host of our After the Game show, Bear Football, says the problem next week is Todd Bowles. He is brutal with blitzes. You know Todd very well. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Todd very well.
Very, very well. I've worked with Todd. I've known him for, 20, 25 years. There's a defensive coach that runs the defense, but he will pressure. He will find ways to pressure this team, and he's very good at it. He's one of the best in the league. So the offense has got to be ready for that pressure. You got to have some quick passes.
Yeah, indeed. All right, I think it is time to bring in my buddy, my co-host from the Dan and Aldo Bear Their Soul show. Now, we might have a little bit of an audio challenge here. You want to fix your shot there? Because all I'm seeing is like the... Bring them in here. See.
Oh.
You see how low you are?
I think it's the chair.
No, I think it's the screen. Bring the screen down. See how that works?
Very well.
Okay, now I got an echo.
All right. So
coming from you, Aldo.
Yeah, Dan, I'm going to turn it over to you. Go ahead.
Greg, it's my privilege. There's an echo in my ear, too.
All right. Let me work on that.
It's my privilege to talk with you.
Maybe we're all fucked up. And then that's what's causing the echo.
Try it now.
Check. Hello.
I'm good. How about you, Dan?
I think so. Yes. No, it's echoing.
All right. Have a conversation because the echo is not too bad. I'll continue to work on it.
All right, Greg, I'm going to ask you something selfishly. I'm just going to take my headphones off here so I don't hear the echo. I always wanted to know, because you were in the Bears front office, back in the day, why did the Bears give up on Anthony Thomas so quickly? I know they signed Thomas Jones as soon as the free agency period had begun, but I always had these wet dreams of having them in the backfield at the same time, and I thought A-Train was a little underrated.
You're talking to the wrong guy. I couldn't stand him. I didn't like that guy in college. And he got drafted in the draft right before we came here. In other words, that draft was in April. And we came in June, like around the 13th, 14th of June. And really, I hated the first two Bears picks for, the Michigan receiver.
Terrell.
And then, in fact, I'll tell you a funny story. Because Jerry's working for Tampa, I'm working for New York, and we're at the Michigan Pro Day. And Terrell was the biggest fucking diva I have ever seen in my life. And I said to Jerry, hey, big dog, aren't you glad we're not going to have to deal with this guy? And I'm not thinking that we're going to be working together, 2.5 months later. he goes, somebody's going to take him and they're going to have to worry about him because he's going to be a wash. And as far as Train, I thought he's really stiff, especially real stiff in the hips. He's too upright. I'm going back 20 years now, better than 20 years. So it's a long time, but stiff in the hips, upright runner, not real shifty, very strong, and he had a burst. And there were some other issues that I'm not going to say publicly. I'll tell you off the air, but I'm not going to tell you on.
The 0-1 Anthony Thomas running the ball, pounding the ball, that I loved it. I wish we could see some of that in today's current Bears team. And if we can shift to that, I don't know if you could hear it on the TV copy. Where I was at the game yesterday, the whole fourth quarter, the stadium was inundated with "Go Pack Go, Go Pack Go." Even when we were leaving the stadium, the guy playing the drums for Cash is he's doing the drums so they can say "Go Pack Go" as we're leaving. So it was immensely disappointing. And the feeling in the stadium was like, why don't the Bears try to throw the ball? Like when the team came out, I'm telling you, Fields got the biggest pop of anyone in the Bears uniform. But by the second half, everyone around us was saying, why don't they just bring Peterman in? Was he exposed yesterday? Do you think that this was the beginning? Like, is my jersey going to be obsolete soon?
Well, I think you're a little too soon on that. And I'm being honest here. I can't answer with a good answer, be it a positive answer or a negative answer, until I see the game tape, and study and say, okay, this guy was open and he missed him or whatever. Because without seeing that, you don't always see that when you're watching the game on TV because you don't have a wide enough angle. So was it Green Bay's coverage or was it Justin Fields not seeing some things? And I don't have the answer. And until I watch that other stuff, but I'm not sure as hell not ready to kiss him off and say, okay, well, we're going to have to hope that we got the first or second pick again next year, so you can take one of those quarterbacks. And hell, you might go. Coach Prime, his kid may end up being the third quarterback in this draft. That kid's starting the first year of major college football. This will be his third year. He's eligible to come out. He might be one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the country.
Tangibly, it felt yesterday that there was no, even when they got the ball back late before the final possession of the first half, it just felt like there was no sense of urgency. And they just felt so flat. And I'll
agree with you on that. And that's on the coaches and the players. The players got to have that feeling, that hustle feeling. And why they didn't, I don't have an answer, but I'd be damn concerned about it.
I am. It felt like just the prevailing thought. It was it's the same old shit. Like if this wasn't the day that we could finally beat Green Bay, then when is? I mean, it's 9 straight now. When does the reign of terror end? It just feels like right now they're not aggressive enough. Like you were talking about what Todd Bowles is going to do. Juxtapose that with the Bears game plan. Regardless of who the quarterback is, they don't even attempt to get pressure. And it feels like that's a huge ailment or it's conducive to them losing. And it just feels like they refuse to make any sort of adjustments.
Well, I know if it's me calling the defense and I'm going against Baker Mayfield, I'm pressuring him all day because he's going to make mistakes if you pressure him. But that's me, I don't think, and Tampa's got a couple pretty good receivers, but they got a very average quarterback.
Well, I don't even want to complain about Mayfield. In Fields' first start, we were in the Cleveland game, and of course it was Mayfield that beat us. And I look back at history too much. I get that. But it just feels like in my lifetime, whether it was Kaepernick or Brock Osweiler, every time that the Bears play a young quarterback, they just sit back in a soft zone and refuse to pressure them. And then they wonder why. Oh, well, Kaepernick 260 yards on them.
Well, there's something to that.
You need to
But I mean, but when you're repeating history like that, you're really condemning a bunch of different coaches.
Right. Well, Lovey seemed to be the last one that had vigor with regards to saying that the rivalry mattered too. I remember Trestman saying it's just another game. It feels like that's what Eberflus was saying. Maybe that is something that resonates with the team then. And is that part of why they're flat? I mean, I know you don't know, you're not there now, but it's just so discouraging as a fan when everyone is there and fired up and it just feels like they don't give a shit.
Yeah, you're giving me questions I can't answer. And because I don't necessarily think it's the coach's job to fire up the players. It's the players' job to fire up the players. It's the captain's job to fire up the players. You know, it's like the players' safe haven is the locker room. Coaches don't go in the locker room, but a lot can happen in the locker room. And that's where your leaders gotta take over. And practice doesn't end at the whistle. It's still going on in the locker room on how your leaders interact with your young players. They're the ones, you know, Tremaine Edmonds has been to the playoffs every year he's been in the league. TJ Edwards has been in the playoffs most of the time and been to a Super Bowl. These guys are supposed to, and Ngakwe's been to the playoffs. These guys are the ones who are supposed to get those guys ready to play. You know, as far as teaching them how to be pros, how to be prepared, and how to go out and play the game the way it should be done.
Could I ask you then in a hypothetical, because I know, like you said, you're not there now, so you can't exactly extrapolate that out and say what's happening. But if this were, say, 2006, 7, and your assessment was that they were coming out flat, which again is my opinion, I'm not trying to project that onto you, but if that was management's opinion, how would that have been handled then? Because I mean, you got a coach that you respect and Lovey, but how do you convey that at the time if it looks troubling? Like, why is the team so flat right now? Like, how do you?
You know, I can go back to that team because I was part of it and look at the leadership on that team. Throw off the coaches. Look at the leadership of the players on that team. You know, offensive line, your John Tate, left tackle, was a little quiet. But between Garza, Olin, and Reuben Brown, they could fire you up now. I mean, those guys were competitors. All three of them were really strong competitors. On the defensive side, you had Adewale, you had Urlacher, you had Briggs, you had Alex Brown. You know, it's Tommy. You know, they were guys that they're pros. You know, that's the best way to put it. They were pros, and they knew how to be prepared and help get the team. The coaches do the X's and the O's. You know, it's now in college, you know, the coach could do some rah-rah stuff in his pregame speech. And if you've watched Colorado and all the last couple games, especially the first game, they had Dion mic'd up for the pregame speech and the postgame speech and all that. But he's doing the college rah-rah stuff and he's using the us against them. Nobody respects us. But that doesn't work in pro football. You know,
question then, if you don't
go ahead.
From that era, again, if you could shed some light, what do you think the Bears let Berrien walk? Was it just simply money? But I felt like, you know, we always talk
I think
about
that was money. I don't remember that much about that, but I think it was money that we weren't. And if you notice, he didn't do shit after he left here. His best years were here,
though, on Sunday Night Football, which, you know, it's just so typical. Robert Brooks had one too in '95,
but Bernard, I like Bernard, but I think it got to be a money thing. I don't remember the exact thing. I don't know where we were on, you know, in the cap and stuff to go back and say this is that. But I know money was part of it. what's he worth versus what's he want to get paid.
All right, my last old school question for you then. If I don't mean to put you on the spot or anything.
No, you're not.
The '08 season, if you can recall that they brought Rex back in a 1-year deal and they had Orton. This is the year prior to the Cutler trade. Why do you think it was just such a foregone conclusion that Orton's the man, KO's the starter? I just like, if you're going to bring Rex back, I felt like that was your first round pick. Why not give him one more shot as opposed to giving that whole season to Orton? Rex had one start in '08.
Rex is from, and Aldo and I have talked about this, and nobody ever talks about it in the media, but it's 100% fact. And Rex shattered his ankle in that preseason game at St. Louis. Okay. And, he wasn't a big guy, just over 6 feet tall, and he had short arms. So when he was coming over the top, he's still got a low release point. When he shattered his ankle, and I've said, you might not have heard it, but I've said it to Aldo. He had, remember the racehorse Barbaro?
Yes.
And Barbaro, they had pictures of Barbaro's leg after they put in like 14 screws. And I remember they showed the X-ray. They had it on like in USA Today and everywhere, and showed it on TV. I remember saying to people, that's what Rex's ankle looks like. He had a gazillion freaking screws in his ankle because it was shattered so bad. And because of that, his flexibility in his ankle was terrible. And he had no lateral agility. And part of his game was being able to slide in the pocket to find, because he's a shorter guy, and to find the open lane to get the ball out of his hand. And when he lost that, because he had a very quick release, he had a very strong arm, but when he lost that lateral agility, that was his game, because of the other negatives that he had with his height and stuff. So I think that, and part of it too was Pep was here then as the quarterback coach, and Pep and I are close. He thought that Rex lost his enthusiasm when he lost his game. So, it was Kyle wanting the job and having the ability to get the job done. And you look at Kyle's career, personally, I thought I was against the Cutler trade. I thought Jerry gave up on Orton too quick. But I know at the end of the last season, he just thought that, the previous season, so that would be the 08 season, or 19, he just thought that Orton wasn't going to get you over the hump. But then when you see what Orton did when he went out to Denver, he played pretty damn well. So, but that's my opinion.
Well, let me ask you your opinion on the current Bears then. If for someone like me that I was really, really down after the preseason game with the third one with Buffalo, and everyone was telling me, oh, no, it's just a preseason. Don't be a meatball. It's just preseason. But everything I think I saw in the preseason game manifested yesterday. The defense was flat. Edmonds out of place, biting on screens that he shouldn't. And the offense, like Fields, just looks, I don't know. It looks like there's no improvement, but I'm just a fan. I guess what I'm asking you to do is be my therapist now and tell me why there's still hope. Yesterday was so bad.
You got a couch to lay on?
Yes, right here.
Excuse me.
This is demoralizing. Like, not even just, I'm not saying because I was at the game, even if I was watching on television.
Like I said earlier, and I don't agree with David Hall much, but I did on that. And it wasn't necessarily anybody's fault, but injuries. Guys didn't play together, get a chance to play together. Didn't get a chance to practice together. And Aldo said the other day, their preseason was yesterday. That's the first time that whole group played together on both sides of the ball. So, like I say, to me, it's never as bad as it seems. And if they would have won by 20, it's not as good as it seems. You know, there's always going to be some bad in there. I'm hoping, and that's all you can do is hope, is that this is going to be similar to Detroit last year. When Detroit was 1-6 after 7 games last year, and then they took off. You know, so this team's got to come together, but at the same time, they got to play with a lot more intensity than they did yesterday on both sides of the ball. And that's on the players. The players got to come out ready to play.
I do agree strongly with what you said earlier. Like Johnson came out and was on fire yesterday. He had intensity, and as a rookie in his first game, and even Foreman, I agreed with that too. We were saying at the game, like, man, it just feels like Herbert's just kind of there, and the other two guys are pounding the rock, you know, and running hard. Like, I agree.
Well, they you know what? They want to play.
Yeah.
That they want to play, and the other guys like, well, I'm the number one. Now, I could be throwing a dart at the wall on that one, but like that one particular play when Roschon ran over the guy. How often do you see a running back do that? I think one of the last times I saw that was frickin' Earl Campbell doing it to Isaiah Robertson, and that was what 35, 40 years ago.
You're right, right.
It's probably closer to 40 years ago. I mean, that was a freaking hit now.
Jordan Howard had a couple of carries like that where he would thunder over people, and then his practice going afterwards. But his ass was.
The only problem is when you have a running style like that, your career's short.
Right.
But hey, make the most of it. That's why people don't want to give running backs a second contract.
You going back to one more thing on Anthony Thomas. You don't think that, in your opinion, that he couldn't have been in the backfield at the same time with Thomas Jones? They had 1 year together. I thought that would have been explosive.
Well, it's you got two running backs and no fullback, you know, so you'd have to. I mean, that gets down to who your offensive coordinator is and how you're going to design your plays. But like I say, you got two.
I just knew them as Wendell Tyler and Roger Craig. But
Roger Craig was a fullback, could play fullback.
Right.
Okay, and now I got all the respect in the world for Thomas Jones. And but Thomas, and I remember, we're in our draft meetings, and our director of player personnel, Marv Sunderland, who's no longer in the league, he loved Thomas. And I said, he stinks. You know, he might have a year that's good, and that was it. And that's exactly what happened. Because I had a number of reasons, but I thought he ran tall, he was stiff. And the stiffness was the biggest thing. No flexibility in his hips at all. It's like he had 2x4s nailed to his hips. And it was so obvious to see. He had good instincts, but at the same time, he didn't have the hip flexibility to necessarily go where the instincts wanted to tell him to go. Does that make sense?
It does.
But when we get off the air, I'll tell you the rest of the story.
I'm really looking forward to that. So
okay.
I'm keep going then off an old school question. I apologize for that. So why do you think?
Okay.
Is it strictly Lovey then, like wanting to move on with Thomas because they just traded him to the Jets for nothing? It felt like almost
Lovey wanted Benson. That was Lovey's draft pick. I think part of it was a Texas thing, and when they came here, there was some of it was public, some of it wasn't. The players were big Thomas Jones fans because Thomas Jones was a pro's pro. He worked hard, didn't say a whole lot. And I mean, he was in training camp, he'd be in the weight room right after practice, every frickin' practice. Because that's when I used to go work out. So I'd see him. So I know he was, you'd see him there. And it wasn't just a little 5-minute workout. He was working his ass off. But that guy wanted to be a great football player. When they drafted Said, the players were like, we're not going to let Thomas lose his job to this guy. He's a rookie, and Thomas is a great pro. It's like they wouldn't even block for set. And then in training camp, when we had 9-on-7 and stuff, and there was a lot more hitting back then than there is now, the defense would knock the shit out of Sed when he got the ball. I mean, it was like a real game when he got the ball. And there was times that scuffles broke out because they targeted Sed to beat the piss out of him because they didn't want him to play. It had nothing to do with his talent. It had everything to do with them wanting Thomas Jones to play.
And then we would trade him to the Jets for nothing, literally nothing.
Well, he's a running back. I mean, and at that point he had played, 6-7 years in the league?
Yeah, but he still had some years left, though.
No question. And that made him a freak of nature. And part of that was the way he took care of himself and his, his guts, his training ability, and everything else. But when you look at it from a perspective of what's a running back with that kind of experience and that many carries worth, you know what I mean? That their value diminishes. Don't forget, when Thomas came out, he was a bust.
Oh yeah, in Arizona, I recall.
Yeah, but whether it was his fault, who knows? He resurrected his career here.
One more old school question. I keep saying that, but I asked Thomas this actual same question, so I'll get your opinion. I loved Rex, if you could already tell by me talking about him so much. But I felt it in Miami with the rain. For whatever reason, he was just not having a good game. And you can't worry about his feelings when you're talking about a Super Bowl championship that's tangibly in your grasp still in the second half. I asked Thomas Jones, if Lovey puts Greasy in, do you think the Bears win the Super Bowl? And he kind of agreed. He didn't acknowledge Brian, but he said that the game was too big for Rex. So I'll ask you, do you think if Lovey puts Greasy in, the Bears win that game?
I don't have the answer to that. I know, but it was later on. It wasn't that year. That Greasy and Turner had a big falling out. And I'll tell you what game it was. The game was the game at Philadelphia.
He led the comeback like 98 yards.
Yeah, the comeback, and he's claiming the mic doesn't work in his helmet.
Right.
Bullshit. It worked fine. He just wanted to call his own game.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the fact. And
That's
Turner
incredible.
was pissed.
He still hit Muhammad for the game-winning touchdown. That was a great comeback.
But it was he lost all credibility, and he wasn't here the next year.
Right. And he threw for 400 on us in 08, by the way.
He lost all credibility with the coaching staff that day.
Wow. I never knew that story. But it's so funny. We mentioned Benson. Benson has a career day against the Bears in 09. Greasy has one with Tampa in 08. It feels like everyone has a revenge game against the Bears. Or maybe but the Bears never have the revenge game against Green Bay or anyone. Like, when do we get our revenge game?
I'll be patient.
All right, I'm going to take
I know it's hard.
I'm sorry. I'm running out of gas here. I apologize.
I'm going to. I have to.
Now you're echoing big time.
All right. Is it better now?
No, it's worse.
Can you mute your computer?
I'm working on it. I don't know where the mute is on this MacBook.
Right there. All right. Should be gone, right, guys?
It's gone.
All right. I'll bring you and Greg can talk after the show. I want to do the last 15 minutes and answer some of the questions that have been posed by our people in the live audience. Visual Man asks, how much does the quarterback not being selected by the current general manager go into the plans of the current GM? Seems we keep having GMs that have a quarterback from the last regime. What say you, Greg Gabriel?
Well, by the moves Ryan Poles has made, he's bought into Justin Fields. But it's got to be Justin's part now, and Justin's got to play.
So with that as the follow-up question, one of the moves that Ryan Poles made for Justin Fields' benefit was the right tackle, Darnell Wright. I know you haven't seen the all 22, so you don't have the benefit of that. But based on what you saw from the TV copy yesterday, how do you assess his play?
Except for that one play that didn't count, I thought overall he played pretty good.
Mm-hmm. And that's encouraging. I mean, and that tackle that he made of Quay Walker at the goal line, it was still ruled a touchdown on the turnover. But when he hit Quay Walker, I was surprised that Quay Walker got up. Now, Quay Walker got up only because his teammates helped him up. He was gone.
He had a concussion from that hit.
Oh, my goodness. Well, and so I take some, not that I want to see anybody hurt, but just the hustle by Wright to get that lick in was nice to see. Mark is expressing all of our frustrations here. And when do the coaches begin to be held accountable? We, of course, said earlier in the show, Greg, that it's players that are going to pay the price right now with either being waived or less playing time. Coaches are not going to be, fired.
Well, no, they're held accountable too,
right.
But it's a lot more private than players are.
Right. And so that accountability hopefully is going on now. I know you're not at Hallis Hall, but it's not difficult to imagine that Ryan Poles is saying, at least asking really tough questions of to the coaching staff.
Now, I'm going to read this. I had just a little quick text with Ryan yesterday.
Okay.
And, I just sent him a text, best of luck today and the rest of the season. He goes, thank you. I'm really excited to see what we have. And then he hit ... after that.
Yep.
Well, so, and right after the game, I looked at that and I go, I wonder what he's thinking right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'm hopeful that he's thinking, I know that next week what we have now will play a lot better than what we showed out against Green Bay. It's just, so sad that it had to happen against Green Bay.
You know what? Yeah, I get it, because
Mm-hmm.
Green Bay is the arch rival.
Mm-hmm.
But, that could have been the Chargers. It could have been Denver. They didn't play good. Last year, they opened up against San Francisco, and granted, there was a torrential rainfall, but they played hard.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't see that yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. We did not. That's the disappointing thing. Homer asked, Justin Fields' play at quarterback, his style of play. How is that sustainable? I mean, he again got licked a couple of hard times.
I don't think if you watch the way he played, I don't think there was only one or two called plays for him to run.
Right.
And one was was the quarterback draw, and it got hit for a loss. He was running when he felt he had to run.
Mm-hmm.
So is that sustainable? I mean, hey, anytime you take a hard hit, it can have an effect. But this isn't a little guy. That's a 230-pound guy.
Yeah.
That's put together. And if you look at most quarterbacks, he's put together so much better than 99% of the quarterbacks in the league. There's very few that are built like he is.
Indeed. When the Bears acquired Lucas Patrick, you went back and looked at his Green Bay tape, and you said this guy can play center. Unfortunately, he has not played at that level this season. King Booker World says, I'm sorry, but Patrick cannot be our center next week. Put the mullet in. He's referring to Dan Feeney, or move Whitehair back and let Carter play at guard. Your thoughts?
Or you can put Feeney at left guard, because Feeney's been predominantly a left guard.
Exactly.
Again, I got to look at the tape, because I don't know if Patrick played good, bad, or indifferent. And I'm saying that very honestly.
Sure.
I saw a couple missed blocks by Whitehair. There was nothing about Patrick that stood out one way or the other, good or bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Lucas Patrick is not going to get any free beers at a local tavern anytime soon. We addressed this earlier in the show, but we wanted to revisit it. Do you think the defensive pass rush was too conservative? Love had all day to throw, and it didn't seem like they want to get away from their system of just rushing 4. Any other thoughts that you want to share on that besides what we talked about earlier, Greg?
No, I don't disagree. I think that you got to create some pressure at times. You don't have to do it every pass down, but you can create it in such a way as they don't know when it's coming. So that can, fuck up the offense, so to speak.
Sure. I know when Greg got to my house after the game, when Dan got home to my house after the game, he complained about the officiating, and I heard a couple of other complaints about the officiating. Frankly, I didn't see any terrible officiating outside of the very first call of the game where they called the penalties on the Packers, and then it ended up being on the Bears, and the Bears started their first series inside their 10 or near their 10. What did you think overall about the officiating in the game yesterday?
Yeah, it was, par for the course. There was nothing really bad. The Bears shot themselves in the foot. I mean, Flu said that coming out of halftime. The penalties, that one series you just alleviated to. So instead of starting in the 20s, you're starting at the 10-yard line or 11-yard line. That changes your whole play calling scheme, for that set. And it just, you can't have those stupid penalties that set you back or inopportune times.
So the Bears have the first pick in the waiver wire. That will happen on Tuesday, I believe, and announcements are made Wednesday. What is happening with the pro player personnel department right now at Hallis Hall? How are they preparing for this first regular season waiver acquisition?
It doesn't have to be a waiver acquisition. You can sign a veteran free agent now. It's a whole different. There's a lot of guys there that can play and help a team, but teams don't want to sign them because their salary's guaranteed if they're on the roster. Now it's different. We're past the first game. Now you sign them and it's week to week. So, just from a cap standpoint, if you're signing the guy and he's not going to be a starter and a full-time player, why would you want to guarantee that salary?
Yeah.
We're guessing. I mean, did anybody get hurt bad? I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Kyler Gordon.
Kyler Gordon apparently suffered a hand injury. We don't know what the extent of that injury.
Well, if it's a hand injury, he can play.
Yeah.
He can't catch, but he can play.
Hopefully he can tackle.
It depends if it's up here. Excuse me. If it's here, different story.
Right.
Getting to that time.
Yeah, get into that time at the 1 hour and 15-minute mark is when those coughs usually start popping in. Jeff says that the discipline on the team was terrible. You get a sense that there's some discipline issues on this team?
I agree that the discipline wasn't good yesterday. I agree that there were some stupid penalties. And I've said all along for the last hour and 15 minutes, they didn't play with intensity.
Right.
There are certain individuals that did, but the team as a whole did not.
Okay. All right. Any final thoughts that you have, Mr. Greg Gabriel, before we pull the plug on this week 1 edition?
I just hope it's a lot better conversation a week from today.
It better be. I mean, even if it's a loss and it's a quality loss, and I hate to use that term, because there are no participation trophies in the NFL, but I want to see the team come out, play harder, play smarter, play with gusto. And if they get beat, by a team that just outmanned them, then we can at least say we still need certain areas of the team to improve in terms of, acquiring players. But the players that we have now, we need to see better performances, and that starts at the quarterback position.
I agree.
All right. That's our show for today. Thank you, everyone who joined us. We had about 260 people join us live and another few hundred on Twitter. This show will be available on demand, so let people know about it. Dan Aguirre and I will be back tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Central. We'll talk about his adventures here in Chicago. We'll get the pulse of the local media. I know that's going to be ugly. and Greg,
I won't even listen.
We do a media mashup, Greg. I'm gonna send you the media mashup.
No, I won't. I refuse to listen because they go, these guys are negative to begin with. So then you give them something to go off on that, then they're fucking unbearable.
That's hilarious. So we'll do that and have some other fun. We got a special guest on tomorrow night's show. So please join us live if you can't on demand. And the best way to stay on top of things is to subscribe to the Barroom Network's YouTube channel or subscribe to our audio podcast. Greg, don't go away. And everyone else, so long.
See?